Howdy, howdy, and welcome back to my video series on building out an expedition camper. And as you saw in my last video, I went ahead and shown how I cut open the two large openings for my gear garage doors that I'm now going to go ahead and plan out the framing and all the planning that went into before even these cuts were done, as well as the framing and the interconnecting of the framing with the bed platform and the bed wall, which there's a lot of integration of all that. So I talked a little more about that because cutting big holes in the side of this camper is not such an easy thing, and there's a lot of thought that goes into it. Here we go. We're about ready to start drilling the corners for this other garage door and cutting it out. And I'm still scared. I've cut this garage door out. Everything seemed to go really well, surprisingly well, but it's incredibly tricky, right down to the extrusions, all these corners, getting them all square, mostly square enough and straight enough and parallel enough between inside and outside panels. And then of course the right place. And the other part of this is that the roof has to be exactly at the level of the bed platform and the front wall exactly at the vertical of the bed wall, because those extrusions, these right here, they are going to encapsulate both, and they're going to encapsulate them both together, and that's going to make it really structurally strong. It's going to strengthen this up tremendously. That big bed platform wall being glued in here and strengthen up this whole section. It's going to seal the garage away from the camper and vice versa, and so those will be thermally sealed and sealed from air from each other. Although I do have a pretty interesting ventilation system that I'll share more with you in the future. But I got to cut this one, and I've measured and I measured, and I don't know if you can really see, but there's about it's about 6 lines on there in different colors, because I've taken a couple different approaches. And although I've taken a couple of approaches, I've also decided to glue in the front wall first, the bed wall first, instead of the bed platform, and then glue in the bed platform later. It was the exact opposite I was going to do. I was going to glue all these back sections, then glue in the upper section extrusion here with the bed platform, and then the front wall and platform onto the bed. And again, those all encapsulate, they all click together. So there's a real process and pattern and geometry to all of this to make it all work. A bit of a puzzle per se. It has to go in a certain pattern, especially with glue on all these edges. You can't, all these mitered corners, they all got to go right together, exactly together. So you can't really overlap these mitered corners together, right? Like this. Here's 2 mitered corners, and so it's not like I can go, oh, this one could come in like this and scrape along. If it can't, they encapsulate this, so it's got to be exactly at that level. They got to go right together. It's going to be tricky, but I decided to change it up, glue in the front wall. So I'm hoping to get this cut out tonight, get that front cleaned up, and then maybe even that front wall glued in tonight. It's got to be at the exact right space, front to back, and pretty close to about the right exact height. Another big cut. Once I get this big cut done, once it goes great, which it will, then I am only left with one more big cut, and that's the pass-through in the camper. The cab's already done, as you saw in a previous video on the cab wall. All I have to do is then cut that front camper wall for the pass-through. That's actually relatively easy because it's a rectangle, and it's a big open space, and there's no tricky angles or little corners and all stuff to line up. I got to get going here. I got to get cutting. I got to get this camper built and done. Once I get this bed platform, bed wall in, then it's awesome, because now I can start building cabinets. And once I can start framing out the cabinets, everything gets better and easier. I'm building instead of cutting and taking away. I'm building by building the framing and everything else. I can get the water tanks, the refrigerator, the freezer, and all the washer and dryer, all the other stuff inside those frames. They can all start taking shape, form. I can start running electrical and plumbing within the cabinet framing. That structurally starts strengthening all together. It's a lot better than cutting, and the fear of every time I cut of messing something up. One more. Let me get it right. Let's get it right. I am framing out a cap from here. It's going to go at a mitered 45 degree. Then I'm going to have a mitered and a mitered piece that's going to go in here to cap that. And then, of course, this piece is going to be mitered and mitered the opposite direction up there at the top to cap this in. So I got to cut all these and get them to the 45s, which is easy, but it's really the challenging part is get them to the exact length so they all marry right up to get together at a 45-degree angle. And this one I'm starting with, it's probably the most challenging one. I'm starting with, I'm going to work my way up. I think that's going to be a little bit easier in this case to do it that way. And also this bottom one, I don't know, I guess I like to start with the most complex things. Like why go easy, right? And that's what I'm doing here. I'm really going pretty complex. I am cutting this one not just flat at the bottom, but with a cutout at the bottom for the external extrusion, the floor extrusion, and then it's going to bump back down in to encapsulate this wall foam and then go in, but then I got to cut out the interior piece of this extrusion right here. This piece, that's my cutouts. This piece I'm going to cut out as well, and that's going to allow me to then get my aluminum framing that's going to be embedded with here, and that's also going to not only give it more strength to ring out the garage, the gear garage, give it more structural strength in the opening of it, but also to help create my seals and the structure for the doors as they come back and close to press against that. So they have structure to press against when they're in a closed position, so they can't be pushed in. It's pretty complex. The door actually can't be, the way I'm structuring it, designing it, it can't be pushed in. It also can't be pulled out, but yet, of course, it can open out. So it's a pretty complex little mechanism, but this little cut here is pretty complex. And then, of course, cutting these is challenging because how do you really cut sections of this when you can't really get to a section? So like it's going to be challenging. So I'm working out all this out. I'm going to start making my cuts, get this thing just cut ever so slightly long, and then I can trim it down ever so slightly if that's what I need to do. But at least this way I'll cut, get this one fit in, and then I get the next one fit, and then that should go easier, and the next one after that should go easier. I can get those three glued in here once I have those cut and get all those glued in. That'll look nice, frame that up, clean it up, get it stronger. And then I'll also get my exact height for the bed as it goes across and get that piece cut, and then I can get my dimensions exactly right for the opposite gear garage, the door on the opposite side, which is going to open up as well. So as I shared with you in my last video, I cut open that other opening for the garage door, but then I got to get cutting some of these extrusions, and still a lot of planning even before making these big cuts. But I think I got a plan worked out. I'm just going to move forward and make it happen.